All right, so good afternoon, everyone. So this is the December instance of our Microsoft Federal Business Applications team webinar. We've got before we get through, I'm going to kind of just go through a little housekeeping on kind of how we're going to, how it's going to go today. Go over the agenda, do some introductions. We're also going to have a quick overview on kind of the Microsoft Technology Centers and what they are. And then we'll have our rules engine demonstration from our guest speaker. And then we'll stop the recording and we'll do a Q&A session at the end. So just a few introductions. So my name is Scott Hansen. I am a senior technical specialist with Microsoft Federal Business Applications. Our guest speaker today is Brendon Colburn. He's a technical architect at the Microsoft Technology Center, and we'll give him a chance to, introduce himself and go through kind of the Microsoft Technology Centers here in a few minutes. But before that, I just want to go through and basically go through our digital event code of conduct. I'm not going to read through all of this, but basically, just we're trying to make sure that we're inclusive and that everybody can interact with our meeting and get our content in an ethical and fair way. We also have our email follow-up. So from this meeting, we're going to have a few email follow-ups sent out, mostly around like the recording, information on future webinars, dates and for registration, as well as Power Platform and Dynamics 365, especially government-specific product updates. So by signing up, you'll be sort of opted into these meetings. If you want to opt out, feel free to email us directly, and we can make sure that you get taken off of that list. And then lastly, for this meeting, this is a webinar. So for right now, we'll mainly be pushing people to interact via the chat. We've disabled cameras, but you can do reactions. So you can, click and say, raise your hand if you want, if you want to ask a question. You can also feel free to post a question in the chat. We'll have people monitoring it and make sure that we pick up on, any of the questions that come in. Try to answer some of them in the chat if we're available. But if not, we can tackle some of that stuff at the end during the Q&A. And then lastly, we have this aka.ms for FedBA, which is Federal Business Applications. So on here, there's going to be a list of kind of our upcoming webinar sessions, as well as links to recordings from today's session and any of the other previous sessions. We also have a bunch of really good content there. We've got videos and training series and all kinds of links that are useful if you're a Power Apps person interested in Power Apps and Dynamics 365. All right, awesome. So with all that kind of stuff out of the way, I will hand it off over here to Brendon, and we can tackle exactly what a Microsoft Technology Center is and what they do there.
Terrific. Thank you, Scott. So Scott introduced me. I'm Brendon Colburn. I'm the Business Applications Technical Architect for the DC Microsoft Technology Center. I've been doing Dynamics, Power Platform, low-code, no-code stuff for a little over a decade now. A lot of it in the partner chain, and also doing some government contracting. And now I have this sweet gig. So what I want to do, change things up a little bit. Instead of PowerPoint slides, I am a MTC Architect after all. I'm going to bring up my whiteboarding app, and we'll go through and I'll draw out a little bit of, the MTC. We'll talk a little bit about how this rules engine idea came about, and then I will show you a example that I built in a day. So don't be too judgmental of what I have, because it was built in a day, but hopefully it kind of helps shed light on this scenario. Let me go ahead and I'm going to turn off my camera for now, because if I don't, you'll be seeing my ceiling fan when I tilt up this Surface Studio that I'm drawing with. And so when I think about the MTC, we have the MTC here. And we have, it's kind of like a Venn diagram where I'll go like boop, 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 where it is in between people, process, and place. So the people, we have myself, but we have, several other architects at the DC MTC, and then, we have architects all around the country that tend to be at a very deep level on one area of the Microsoft technology, and then be fairly deep in all the other areas too. So like, I am very deep in, business applications, but I'm dangerous at, Azure DevOps and SharePoint and other stuff. And the MTC has all of these great people. It's also a matter of like the people that we work with, all these different account teams and customer success units and engineering. It's really a hub from that standpoint. Process, the MTC has been around for 20 plus years, and for anything to be around for that long at Microsoft kind of implies something is happening right. And we like to say that what we're doing right is we're listening. So, it's not an MTC session unless we're kind of leading it with discovery, asking questions, asking to see your implementations and your challenges, and really getting a baseline understanding before we ever like demonstrate any technology or give any advisement. Then from a place standpoint, it's the center, the Microsoft Technology Center. So it's a place that you can go. It's a place that we have all sorts of cool technology lit up that you can see in our experiences. And also what I like about it being a physical place is that you go there. And when you go somewhere, that means that you don't have the distractions that you normally have, at your work or in your home office. Everyone gets to go to that place. Another part of our process is usually we have day-long sessions at least. So then you stay in that place for, 4 6 hours or so, and you get a level of focus on a problem that I think people rarely get in their day-to-day jobs. So that's how I would describe the MTC. So now let's start talking a little bit about rule engines. And I guess I'll bring back up my camera for a little bit and talk to it. So the idea of rule engines has been around for a long time, before like the Power Platform or Dynamics even. You can look up rule engine in Wikipedia, and it'll give you a pretty good definition of a rule engine. But my attempt at a rule engine definition would be a way of presenting to like non-technical people, like business users, the ability to change business rules and behaviors and logic in the system without having to write any code. So they can like enter in records, and then there is an underlying rules engine that will read through those records and ultimately do the behaviors that the end users want to have happen without having to make a request to a dev team. Now, to give an example of a rules engine, or even a few. So before I had this gig, I worked at Microsoft Consulting Services, and I was a dev lead for a few projects at the Department of Justice. And a rules engine that we implemented there, well, taking a step back briefly, the system that we implemented there was a benefits application portal. So, a police officer or firefighter dies or is injured, or first responder in the line of duty, they or their family members are subject to a benefit. So they go to the portal, they enter in information, and as long as things line up, they receive a benefit. So to the point of things lining up, what we did with what we now call portal power pages is we implemented a rule engine on the back end that would make it so that depending on how people answered questions in the portal, like they would say, I'm the legal representative. Okay, that means you will need to upload a legal representative form. This is a matter of death. Somebody died. Okay, you will need to provide a death certificate, things like that. So that was a simple rules engine that we put in place back in the day. And I think now what I can do is I will go through the scenario of what I kind of fleshed out a couple weeks ago and what I'll be demoing. So I came up with a scenario, and I mean, to say that I came up with it, I've had several customers come up with a scenario, and I kind of genericized it a little bit for the sake of this webinar. This scenario is that I want conditional logic to determine a chain of approval. So from the tech landscape, I decided, okay, I'm going to use things in Dataverse like custom tables, metadata to trigger on, forms and grids for UX. I determined that I wanted to use Power Automate for a cloud flow to run a lot of this stuff on the back end, and a business process flow to also kind of drive and dictate behavior a little bit of the rule engine. I derived a entity relationship diagram here where I felt that what I'm calling the package would be the central entity, that there would be a package review process that would take place on a package. And this is, you can think of package as pretty generic. It could contain anything like a series of documents that need to be approved, or a series of requests, travel requests, training requests that need to be approved. Ultimately, we then have tasks that can be spun off from the package, and assignments that can be done on the package. And then we have a separate table called rules. And the rules contain, conditions that can be met, as well as actions that can take place on the package. And then I also came up with a simple, data flow that the package review process goes from submission to validation to ultimately determining whether or not this package is ready to move forward. So yeah, there's that. I'm used to having a little bit more interactive of a session and having questions along the way, but I'm rolling with the punches with the webinar format. What I'm going to do now, I'll share from my other device here and demonstrate what I built. All right, is my screen sharing from the other device?
Yeah, I can see it.
Terrific. All right, so I created a solution called Organizational Package Review. It has a series of components in it. This is a Dataverse solution that exists in a Power Platform environment. This solution, has a series of Dataverse tables in it. I brought in the out-of-the-box Azure Active Directory user table so that I could potentially have somebody be assigned to a package even if they aren't a licensed user. I had a rules table as per like the data ERD that I showed, the package table, the package review process, assignments, actions, and conditions. So where do I want to start? Maybe I will show it at a high level. I have, a package form. It has a business process flow at the top that goes from submission to validation to determination, as per what we were saying on my whiteboard. And so I specified that this package was of type training, but I could have also said this is a travel package. And then automatically, because of the rule engine, it created a training assignment and associated it with the package. So that's what the behavior ends up looking like at the top end. Now taking it a level down, I have a record in the rules table. And in my entity relationship diagram, I was talking about, like a rule has one-to-many conditions and one-to-many actions. I was thinking of fleshing it out that way with tables related to tables, but I decided instead to just have a block of JSON on the rule and have that be what I would be reading through. So the way that my JSON is formatted here is that I determine what kind of conditional behavior I have, like whether it would be an and or an or. Then I specify what my conditions are. So I have two conditions for this rule. One condition is that the package is of type training. And then the other condition is that the stage is at the validation stage. So then I have another part of the actions that determines what actions I want to take place based off of my conditions being met. So, I established what the parent table is going to be, and then what the child table will be. So I had the package table, and then the child table is the assignments. And then I had like a little generation data object here where I kind of establish, when I create the assignment, what data do I want to enter into it? In this case, I just kept it really simple. And I said, oh, I want the name of the assignment to be training assignment. And I mean, you can see at the end of the day, that is what ends up happening. And then I also added another action in here. I didn't get to fully implement this, but my idea was that, I'd also like it so that I would add a task to the package that would have a subject of provide training cost and a regarding object ID. And I kind of was like thinking, oh, I'm going to need to put like some sort of templating in here in order to inject the value. So like taking this down another level, I can go to the Power Automate flow that successfully ran. So I'll go through each one of these actions and kind of call out what's happening here. So I have a Power Automate flow called Rules Engine. And the trigger of the Power Automate flow is that the package review process changed. So the behavior is like, when I go into my my model-driven app form, I can move between different stages of the business process flow. And when I change the stages, because of the way that I've set up this Power Automate flow, it triggers the flow, and then I can do subsequent operations because of it. I initialize a variable called matches where I'm going to have my matched rules. And I initialize a variable called matched to determine whether I have found a match. I get details about the stage associated with this business process flow, particularly that the process stage name is validation. I get additional details from the package. And the way that this kind of works is when a business process flow fires and you trigger off of it, I believe one of the things in the JSON payload here, well, it's in here, would be the ID of the parent entity to the business process flow, which in this scenario is the package. So I use that ID to then get additional details about the package. Then I also get the rules from the rule table. And I kind of realized after the fact that I could have maybe streamlined some aspects of this by using the data operations filter connector in Power Automate, but I was just kind of shooting from the hip a little bit. So in my first for loop, I go through each one of the rules. I parse the JSON. I initially assume that I do not have a match, or actually I assume that I do have a match. Then I go through each condition. So, in the JSON, within my JSON, there's an array of conditions. So I'm looping through each one of those. And if I've found a match, I get the value of training. That's like the type. And I don't say that it's unmatched. So I skip the unmatching because I found a match. Then in the second scenario, I actually go into this other path. And this is because in the JSON, like one of them is type package and one of them is type stage. So like I have the criteria that one type is equal to training and two that stage is equal to validation. So in the second rule that I go through, or the second condition on the rule that I go through, and the idea is you could have like a whole listing of different rules that I meet the stage condition, and then I determine, okay, well, do I have the right stage? I do have the right stage, so I use kind of inverse logic here, and I said, okay, so I've got matches for both of these criteria. Now, because I've matched, I append my matches. So I have an array of rules that have matched the conditions. Then I have a separate for loop that goes through each match, and I parse some JSON so that I can get the underlying actions. So, you know, in the JSON, I have another array, and it's an array, it's an object array of the actions that I want to take place. And so I say for each action, add a new row to the assignments table and insert that data in. So, you know, in this area, I would probably, if I flesh this out more, do something similar to what I did in the rules, where I would find out, oh, hey, is it a, you know, is it a stage versus a package? I would say like, oh, which table is it against? And I would insert against the right table. Like another thing that I was thinking about that I didn't implement in time, if I go into edit mode here, is that you know, when I'm going through each one of these, I can statically set like, oh, it's going to be this table. But actually what I ended up doing is I dynamically set the table name and the row item. So like, what does that mean? If I add another Dataverse action here, I can show you what it means. So out of the box, when you're adding a new row to Dataverse, you select from the dropdown here. But what you'll see when you scroll down to the very bottom here is that you can also enter in a custom value. And this is what allows me to, in essence, add a new row against like dynamic table options. So like I would go through each one of my actions and be like, oh, first I want to create the task, and then I want to create the associated assignment. So you know, looking at a form that has some JSON in it that I would modify the JSON, that's fine and good. But I mentioned at the start of this scenario that ideally a rules engine is something that is friendly for end users and people that maybe wouldn't be manipulating JSON. So, you know, again, I only had a day to do this, so don't judge me too much. But I created a Canvas app that started the process of kind of like parsing the JSON and giving you the ability to kind of start working with it. And the end goal would be that an end user would go into a separate Canvas app called the rule builder and work and build out their rules that would then end up in that table as JSON, and then the Power Automate would run through all the rules and do the appropriate actions. So which one of these is my Canvas app? Here we go. Again, yeah, don't judge. I believe I included the creator kit in here also. I didn't yet, but the plan is that I would use the creator kit to have this look better, but I just wanted quick and dirty to build something out. So the rule builder shows you your rules, allows you to add new rules, and allows you to update existing rules. And then if I say that I want to add a new rule, it shows you at the bottom like what your rules look like so far, and then it shows you the conditions and the actions that are outlined in your JSON. You know, there's a lot more that needs to be done here as far as like adding a plus button so that I could add conditions into this array, but I started simple. But it's actually, you know, somewhat advanced. So first of all, I'm using the new parse JSON capability that was recently added to PowerFX. So I have this blank rule, and I think I established the blank rule on start of the app. So like the first thing that loads when this Canvas app loads is that I establish a blank rule, which is, you know, that formed JSON, somewhat similar to what we saw in the model-driven app, where I have my conditions and my actions for each rule. Now, when I go to that new rule screen, what it's doing is it's parsing the rule. And the idea would be like, okay, well, I have a blank rule here, but in real scenarios, I would be tying this to the Dataverse table, the rule table, and I would be parsing the JSON. And what I did first was I collected the conditions, and this is how you do that with the new format with parse JSON. It allows you to go through JSON, loop through items. In this case, it's rules, rule.conditions, and perform your action. And in this case, it's returning a JSON object that I then insert into the conditions table. And then the conditions, there's a gallery here that I am populating with the conditions that I dynamically populated based off of the parse JSON method. You know, I was working on setting up a form that would be tied to the conditions so that then I could add fields in there. And I was having some issues, like it was kind of the end of the day, kind of like adding those values in from the parse JSON. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, what this would, like if I bring it back to the whiteboard and show what the remaining vision would be behind this, it would be something like this. So as I was showing with the rule builder, and this is something that I don't think would have taken me that much more time to build. Probably just a couple more days I would have had it there, but it was just days that I didn't have, unfortunately. I'm kind of surprised I got a full day to work on it. So, you know, the rule builder, you'd end up having that home screen where I have, you know, my list of rules. Where you can go into your rule, or you can add rules. You know, ideally, maybe you'd want to give users the ability to delete rules also. That's a terrible trash can. You'd want to add delete rules also. But, you know, the logic would be, oh, if I go here, I'm doing existing roles. If I go here, I'm doing new roles. And the UI pattern would be kind of the same regardless, where I then have this screen where, you know.
Oh, sorry. There's a question in the chat about whether or not this is a solution that you're able to share.
Yeah, it's a solution that I'm willing to share. I'll put it on GitHub in my account, and you know, I could also share this with Steve and team for them to add it to the Federal Biz Apps repository.
Yeah, okay, perfect. That was gonna be my question, if we can throw a link up there too, since that's where we're directing everyone from these.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's just, as of right now, it's just a solution. I suppose you'd want to have, like, I'd probably throw the JSON as an example in there also, so you could kind of get started with it. The idea is that it's kind of super generic though, and it should be able to handle nearly anything that you'd throw at it. And that's kind of why it took a while to build, is because I was really trying to think through as much as I could how to keep this generic. So, I have the JSON that's loading here. Then I have two little areas where I have my conditions and actions. And I can see all my different conditions and actions associated with rule 1, let's just call it, or whichever rule. You'd have kind of a header at the top probably. And then you'd have a plus button. And I think, a good way to do this from a UX is that you'd have a fly out dialog that then would show up over here where you could, provide those fields of information in regards to, your condition or your action. And ultimately, when you'd hit submit, my laptop's in the way here a little bit. Submit. Then I would think this would do two things. One, this would update the JSON and the label. But this would also patch to Dataverse your update to the or added rule. And this would make it so that, your end users would have this easy way of determining their conditions and the actions that they want to have take place. There'd probably be some more nuances here as well with time. Like you'd probably, like in my implementation, I was having, text values where you would say like, oh, it's the task table that I care about as far as a condition is concerned. But I don't know. If you wanted to be smarter with this, eventually you'd probably want to have this be a drop down of available Dataverse tables. Right, so like you could choose from a list of tables, and I don't know, you could even pare down that list just to the things that you want your end user to be able to spin out actions on based on conditions being met. So I mean, I doubt like you would populate that dropdown with all of the tables in Dataverse, but potentially a subset of those you would give as options that they could select. Instead of just giving them a text field that they could fill anything in, including things that would you'd have to handle in the rule engine if they typed it wrong or whatever.